And we are at Kilbourne Hall with Dr. Eddie Henderson. Mr. Henderson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Believe me, it's my pleasure to be back in Rochester. I think this is my third time I played at the Rochester Festival. The first time it was an outdoor event in the park, or I think in the park, and the last time was at a club, and this first time at the concert hall.
Talk about growing up in terms of your childhood and your parents and the influences you heard coming up, because it was pretty unique.
Yeah, yes, it is. I think it was in my blood just by virtue of my mother being in the original Cotton Club, a dancer. So her roommate was Billie Holiday, and my father, who died when I was 9, he was in a group called the Charioteers, Billy Williams and the Charioteers, which was the #1 black singing group in America, over and above the Mills Brothers and the Ink Spots. And so I was around, I'd meet all these people like Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday, and Lena Horne used to change my diapers. I was told, I don't remember.
Speaking with Eddie Henderson. So, Eddie, that being said, you're with your family and the influence literally being your blood, but yet you pursued a career in education and medicine. But how were you able to do the dual careers? Because in just terms of going, that's such an intensive thing, obviously, with medicine, and then, of course, music is a calling. So how were you able to manage those two?
Yeah. Well, quite frankly, I wasn't really even interested in medicine, but when my real father died when I was 9 and my mother remarried, my stepfather was a doctor, and all his patients, people like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Cannonball, Sarah Vaughan, Billie Holiday, Duke Ellington, all those people. He loved music, but he really didn't have any talent. So he took the attitude. He told me when I was 14 years old, he said, I'm a doctor, and that's the closest thing to God, and you're not as smart as me, so you're going to be a bum in the waterfront. So I said, oh, yeah, watch. And so I went out of my way to prove him wrong. So that's why I went into medicine. It's a funny motivation, but it turned out okay.
What did he think when you actually proved him wrong?
Pardon me?
What did he think when you proved him wrong?
Well, he turned red as a beet, And then after I proved him wrong, then I quit medicine and joined Herbie Hancock. So he told me, well, I don't understand how you could stop being a doctor and just to go play music, which he really wanted to do. So I told him, I said, well, quite frankly, that's not for you to understand. It's for me to understand. I can do what you do, but you can't do what I do. He said, get out of my office.
Speaking with Eddie Henderson.
But we love each other. God bless him.
That being said, we talk about working with Herbie Hancock and the Mondici Band of the late 60s and early 70s. That was really just a cool concept in terms of what you were able to do, and using texture, colors, and also drawing an audience who they're used to seeing Herbie and hearing Herbie in a certain way, and that was a whole other way that people were.
See him as Albert Rotunda playing that kind of music, and I think the music of M. Mondici was more or less a derivative of Bitcher's Brew, which, quite frankly, just preceded the Mwandishi concept, open skies type of improvisation rather than tunes with nailed down chords. It was just, you listen to what's happening at the moment.
Speaking of Eddie Henderson, so for tonight's show, paying tribute to the legacy of Cannonball Adderley, for you, what was he like, and his legacy, do you think? Because people started lining up for this show at 2:30 this afternoon.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so it just gives you an idea of his impact still.
Oh, absolutely. I remember one of the first bands that I saw, because my first teacher was Louis Armstrong when I was 9 years old. My mother knew him. He gave me my first 2 lessons. But I was so young, I had no idea of who he was or what stature he held. But then when I was in high school, Miles Davis stayed at my parents' house. He was staying at the Black Hawk, and he took me in his car to the gig, and in the band was John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Philly Joe Jones, Paul Chambers, and Wynton Kelly. And I remember saying to myself, what? I didn't know you could do that with an instrument, And I was so impressed, of course, by Miles, but I was more impressed by Cannonball and Coltrane.
Why?
just the facility they had in the horn. I'd never heard anything like that. But Miles's eerie sound got to me also. You know that.
So for tonight's show, working with Jim and the rest of the band, what's it been like to be able to play this music and see crowds who just appreciate it so much that you are continuing the legacy of Cannonball's work?
Well, that answer is twofold. I mean, it's really my pleasure and my honor to play with Jim Snydero, Peter Zach, Joe Farnsworth, and Nat Reeves, because they're all good friends of mine. It's really the first time we played this particular music, but they're all consummate professionals. And we just had our little skeleton sound check and rehearsal. Feels like we've been playing that music all our lives. We've been listening to it all our lives, And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to play homage to the great Cannonball Adderley, because I saw him so many times. I knew him personally. I never got a chance to play with him. Well, actually, I didn't play with him. I have a picture of me when I first started playing at my parents' house, at Cannonball, and Nat Adderley came over the house. My mother took a picture. My mother said, "We're giving you all these lessons. Play for Cannonball." And I'm shy and nervous. I'm like a teenager. So I'm in the corner playing to a Lee Morgan record. And two frames, one Cannonball and Nat are sitting like this. And the next frame, Cannonball, he fell asleep while I'm playing.
Glad you kept playing.
So that was that.
Speaking with Eddie
It was
Henderson.
awesome.
Speaking with Eddie Henderson on Jazz 90.1. Eddie, again, thank you so much for taking music further with everything you've done.
Pleasure. Pleasure to be here.